when I was living in Ohio. Before I started really into my transformational journey is when the synchronicities were really coming in hot and heavy for me. And I see the synchronicities and the numbers as kind of little wake up, wake up from the universe, right? From the divine is pay attention. There is this beautiful, magical flow, this stream of divine energy, and it's time for you to come into the stream and flow with it.
Hmm.
There's a saying, there's your plan and then there's the divine plan. It's getting on the divine plan because you will feel so much more supported. You are more supported. I mean, you're always supported. You're just not accepting the support when you're out of divine flow. Welcome to the Let's Be Real podcast, genuine conversations for authentic living. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Lisa Allshafer, empowerment life coach and author.
And I'm Sondra Pariser, health and wellness entrepreneur and truth seeker and truth speaker.
And today's episode is about aligning with divine flow.
You know, uh, this is where the magic really happens, is when you're in flow and living a purpose-driven life. It's effortless. So we really want to kind of guide you through this little experience. Now, make sure you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We used to put this at the back end, but we'll put it at the front end because it's really important for our message to get out to those that need it and those that are seeking it. So make sure you hit the subscribe and like, and please, please, please comment. We really love your feedback. It makes Lisa and I so happy to know that I guess what we're sharing with you, which is our vulnerability in this life, is meaningful to you. So anyway, there you go.
Awesome. And, just to take off a little bit from that, we get so much feedback privately, which we absolutely love. But what can be really beneficial, because some of the things that you're receiving through what we're providing through the podcast may be very beneficial to other people who see your comment or who see how our podcast is impacting you. So we always appreciate that. And then we can play nice with the algorithms, which will also help our podcast as well. So, yeah, so let's go into the subject today, and that is aligning with divine flow. One of the things that I was thinking about, I was really torn between, do we do about connecting with angels or do we do all these things? Because there's so many ways to take this. And, my book, Journey with an Angel, which, is behind me, but this is the book. If you haven't ever seen it before, this book is all about divine flow. And what was interesting is that the book ended up being about the experiences that I was having while I was writing the book. It was some of the most amazing times. I launched it in 2015. I started writing it in 2012. So it wasn't a quick book because a lot of it was what was happening. And what was happening is some of what we're going to talk about today, a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But the divine flow, the divine was just like a little army around me. It felt like the whole time. And these experiences were just I was in awe of so much of what was happening while I was writing the book. So, so I was in divine flow at that point in time, but I've also been out of divine flow. So I know what it feels like to be out of divine flow too. And trust me, you want to be in divine flow. It's so much better than being out of divine flow. So that's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, signs of that you're in divine flow, and then how to align with it, because that's also important if you feel like you're really not aligned with it right now. So let's start with we'll start with intuition, because intuition, we've mentioned it a lot in past podcasts, but intuition is where you really are. You're allowing the information to come in from more of that part of you that's divine. It's your spirit. It's your spirit's guidance system for you. And when we trust and follow it, that's when we make better decisions. That's when we you know, may not know exactly why we're guided to do something, but we have been following our intuition. So we go with it, because the more you use it, the more refined it becomes. And also, if you don't use it, the more it's like anything like memory. If you
Mhm.
don't use it, you lose it, so to speak. Well, you don't really lose it, but you definitely don't follow it as far as intuition goes. And it's the it's like playing with a full deck because we all have logic and reason and that we definitely need that. But when you combine your intuition with your logic and your reason and that part of your brain, so to speak, that's when you make the best decisions. And that's when you take action on those decisions.
The intuition is it's a muscle I've used my whole life. And while I didn't know that that was there's a couple words for your intuition. For me, it's a knowing, and
Mhm.
it's I don't hear voices. I don't you know I just get downloads, and it's more of when I think of intuition for me personally, it's when something hits my heart and there's just a clear feeling, hey, read this book, watch this podcast, um go over here, go do this, hightail your butt to Maui. Okay. Like, I just have this intuition. It is a muscle. It's, I think of
Mhm.
all the things that we're going to share today, the intuition can be one of the trickier ones. So, as we start to talk about the other ways to align with your flow and what that looks like for everybody, we're going to kind of piggyback back to intuition because it'll all start to play into it. 'Cause like I think that intuition, and I guess I'm just speaking for me. No, I am speaking for lots and lots of people. They really don't know how to connect to it.
Mhm.
So what we're
Yeah.
going to give you in the next handful of bullet points is this is how you connect to it, right? So all this is a muscle. You have to exercise it, and but the best way that is it's something that pulls at your heart that gives you a sign of something to do, and then you follow through because your higher self, your soul self, your much bigger self, it wants you to be happy and vibrate from a higher frequency. And it sends you messages, but for me intuition comes in the form of a sensation in the body that typically will come from my heart.
Yeah. One of the ways I describe intuition is similar to that. But you know the cartoons where you have a devil on one shoulder, an angel on the other, not perhaps literally, but maybe an angel. And so they have two different voices, so to speak, right? Again, not that you're necessarily hearing voices, but they have this influence on you. And uh, the if you think of the angel side
Mhm.
of that kind of visual, that would be more of your spirit or your intuition, because that's where your intuition comes from, is your spirit. And so that part of you is like a knowing.
Mm.
And it comes in, like you said, it's a knowing. It's got a different level of feel to it. It feels differently and it doesn't panic and it doesn't have a intensity so much, but more of a calming go here. Even if it could be a life threatening situation, it might be go here, but it's
Yeah.
not go here, right? It doesn't have that panic in it where this side, the negative side or the devil on the shoulder, so to speak, is more going to drive with fear instead of just really moving you with a level of calmness towards something that you really are to be going toward.
Yeah, and
So
as
that's
we
one
walk.
way to make the distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in a prior podcast, but just to bring it back together, there is a difference between intuition and getting a download. Um,
Mhm.
as you start to implement these other bullet points to get you in alignment with your higher self, um, it's really important to know because once you start exercising these, whether it's through meditation or expressions of gratitude, or in a prior podcast, I was talking about right now, I'm in this like 30-day, you write 3, 3, 6, and 9, something that I want to manifest in my life. Right now, it's the sell of the home. I just picked something randomly because I'm playing with it,
Mhm.
and sure enough, randomly we had a showing on our home, and it was like out of nowhere. And then I got lazy because, oh, and here's what's even more powerful, and this is just for me on a side note, is that I'm having the girls write 3 times. I am
Mm,
so happy that this home is sold. And that's the all, you just write the same thing all the time. And then we got lazy. Oh yeah, so this was like 3 days ago. And then we got lazy and it's like everything went radio silent. And I'm like, oh, I gotta follow it through until it's sold. So okay. Little exercises. So just kind of as you walk through some of these exercises that we give you, just sort of pay attention. But the intuition is like Lisa's saying, it doesn't yell at you.
mm.
A download will come in the form of a message. So, but we'll cover that as we move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a
Yeah.
download is, again, it's kind of information that's coming from another divine source, you could say.
Mm, yeah.
Right. And maybe specific, may have nothing to do with you. It might have to do with the person that you're talking with. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It is coming up. So we'll leave that and save it for later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the next sign that you are definitely in divine flow, which is again so much of what my book is about, is synchronicity.
Hmm.
Synchronicity it's a term coined by Carl Jung. For those of you who are familiar with the famous psychiatrist, there was Jung and then there was Freud. I think Freud was a mentor of Carl Jung. Either way, it's seemingly coincidental things happening together that are just, you know, not the probability isn't that that would happen, right? And so synchronicity is something that you just when it happens, it really catches your attention. And because it, kind of that thing makes you go, hmm,
And I
right?
gotta nail this because it kind of plays
Yeah.
into the next bullet point, which is numbers, but I'm going to let you get
Mhm.
into numbers because numbers
Sure.
speak
Yeah.
very clearly to you.
Hmm.
But if you've listened to our prior podcasts, Miracle Monday, June 19th was the day that it was just really a day that woke me up to the bigger meaning of what does it mean to be Sondra.
Hmm.
Um, and I was struggling with intense nerve pain, back pain, medical industrial complex, and I was on drugs, and I was So that morning, Miracle Monday morning, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, just riddled in pain. Got out of bed at 4:30 in the morning because it was summer break, and so the kids were sleeping on our floor, and I didn't want to wake anybody up, and the pain was just, you kind of groan a little and you make some noise, and so I got out of the room at 4:30 in the morning and I went into the living room and I sat on the couch and I just didn't want to take the drugs. I just didn't. So I'm like, I got to fill my mind. And so I said a prayer. I'm like, I need help. I need help. I need help. I need to get out of this. I need to get through this. And so I go onto YouTube to keep my mind occupied, and all these beautiful YouTube videos started coming through, real messages of hope and love. And then this is what happened. Here's my synchronicities, right? Oh, and I'm on the wait list for the 3 different pain management doctors to look at me. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm dying. There's no answers. And what are they going to do to me? And do any back surgery? And like, anyway, it was the whole thing. So I had an appointment at the Escalade dealership to get the car fixed or tuned up or whatever. And that was at 7:30 in the morning. And again, at this stage in the game, I'm fighting the drugs. Like, I don't want to take them. They don't work anyway, and they make you loopy, and it's a whole other level of blah, blah. So so Alan comes out of the room at like 6:30 and he says, I'll take the car, honey. Go lay down. I said, you don't understand. I wish I could sleep. I'm in so much pain. So I get in the car and I get lost going to the dealership, which is like 4 miles away. But I get lost because the freeways in Texas are all weird. So anyway, I get lost, and so by the time I get the Escalade there, I they want to know the odometer, and I tell them the odometer, and there was the sevens and the twos, which is a synchronicity for me because I was in such trouble. Oh God, don't start crying again, Sondra. Um, it was a sign
It's
that you were
okay.
with me. It was a sign that you were with me. There's
Mm,
my sevens and my twos, and there's a sign that you're with me. And so it made me smile. So then I get in the loaner car. I get turned around again, right? So if I hadn't gotten lost, your numbers wouldn't have showed up because to get to the dealership and have your numbers meant that it would have been different numbers had I not gotten lost. So I get lost again on my way home. And I call Alan and he's like, "Do you need to pull over to the side of the road?" And I said, "No, I'm not on any drugs. I'm just lost, And I said, I'm coming home. So I get home in the loaner car. For some reason, I look down at the odometer and I don't ever look at the odometer. And there
Right.
were the numbers again.
Mhm.
And then I smile and I'm like, okay, here I am praying and asking and praying and asking and praying and asking. And there you were again. So then at 8:30 in the morning, pain gets so bad, I take all the drugs and I just get into bed because the only position I could really get comfortable in was laying down. So I get back in my bed. By 9 o'clock, all the drugs hit me. So it was like gabapentin and Percocet and then steroids. And I get a call from Dr. Miracle. And it happened to be, the synchronicities. It also happened to be Gretchen, one of my dearest soul sister, lifelong friends forever. Had a friend who was or is working with a group of osteopaths. So there was another synchronicity. Crazy,
Mhm.
right? Because whoever called me is who I was going to first because I needed help. And it just happened to be Gretchen's contact, which was so beautiful. But I wasn't putting that together at the time because I'm like, all the drugs are kicking in. I'm like, oh. And she's like, all right,
Mhm.
we got two openings. And I'm sitting there and I said, okay, hold on just a second. And I put the phone down. I'm like, I don't think I can do this right now. And I hear this voice. And this was a voice. You need to get up and go. Get in the car and go. And it was right down the street, 3 miles away, close to the dealership. um, and I get there, and now I'm in my Jeep, my Rubicon, and I park right in front of his door. And there you were again, the sevens and the twos. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay. And then I
Yeah.
walked in, and the miracle happened. And, emotions stored in the body present as pain. And Dr. Miracle helped me. And I've been great ever since. So, how about that for both synchronicities and numbers?
Yeah.
I'll let you go to the numbers because you gave me your numbers, and isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah. Yeah, so and they're similar but subtly different, the numbers show up synchronistically, in our lives. Yeah, so if we go to numbers now, I was also introduced to the number 227. Wow, way back, 2006, as all sorts of other synchronicities were coming in about angels and so forth. But I had already been starting to see numbers before that. It was just a different number. It was 333. And so, when I was living in Ohio, before I started really into my transformational journey, is when the synchronicities were really coming in hot and heavy for me. And I see the synchronicities and the numbers as kind of little wake up, wake up from the universe, right? From the divine, is pay attention. There is this beautiful magical flow, this stream of divine energy, and it's time for you to come into the stream and flow with it.
Mhm.
There's a saying, there's your plan and then there's the divine plan. It's getting on the divine plan because you will feel so much more supported. You are more supported. I mean, you're always supported. You're just not accepting the support when you're out of divine flow. And so back in Ohio, I just started to have these experiences which are in the book, because some of this stuff is, I think, important to understand, that it's not going to necessarily show up. Probability is it's not going to show up the same way for others as it does for me or you. There's going to be
Mhm.
commonalities like synchronicities and numbers and things like that, kind of the general overview of it, but how they come in, it's really paying attention to some of those things that are just, you might overlook if you're not really paying attention. In
Mhm.
fact, there was a video that I did just recently that my girlfriend, who's also a coach, I said something about alluding to this, and I said, "It's there when you have the eyes to see." And she says, "Oh, that's good." Right? Because you have to clear off kind of your lens of how you see life in order to allow this beautiful energy, this divine energy, to come in. And so
Mhm.
that was happening, and that really was that was me waking up, is starting to put these things together, and I was just blown away some of the stuff that was happening back then, and then I moved to Las Vegas, and then they kinda died down for a while,
Yeah.
and, I kinda went off track for a while, in that process, but they pulled me back in, and that's when so much was happening. In fact, the synchronicity is one of the synchronicities was that I had sat down and wrote, like journaled my experience, and I was feeling super lost and, not on purpose, and really just trying to understand me. Like you talk about Miracle Monday, who is Sondra? Well, I'm like, who is Lisa? Why am I here? And those big questions. And and then 3 days later, I came upon my mentor because actually that goes into another one. It's so hard to keep these separate, but asking, asking and you shall receive, which is coming. So, but that was
Oh,
more of a
I know that's next, and I'm like, "Wow, they actually all
they do
look,
connect.
I you
Yeah.
asked and you received."
And I received 3 days
Time
after I was
is
at the low point,
well,
right?
that was the same thing when, my November 1st declaration to universe,
Mhm.
it was a massive ask.
Yeah.
I want to heal completely. Ugh. Careful what you wish for.
Mhm.
Although I'm so grateful, right? And so, yeah, I mean, they all asking, synchronicity,
Mhm.
numbers,
Mhm. Yes.
intuition.
Let me go to the numbers. I'll just try to stick to the numbers here. So the 227 and 722 are my numbers. And this is actually gonna I know where I'm going now. I didn't quite have connected to where I was gonna go with this, but so I have been seeing these numbers for years, probably since 2006, I think it was, maybe 2008, I can't remember. But and in 2012, I went to the Mediterranean
Mm,
and met David, who was very significant in the book, right? So this is October of 2012, and he's actually sitting behind me on a cruise, right? Because that's, you have your tables that you sit at. He was actually right behind me. And then his wife tapped me on the shoulder in one of the seminars we were in. I don't want to get too bogged down in the details here, but ultimately what happened is we connected. So they're from Minnesota, I'm from Las Vegas, and we connected in the middle of the Mediterranean. So now we can go a little into divine orchestration here, but in the middle of the Mediterranean, and had this amazing connection. And he channels, and he downloaded a whole bunch of stuff for me. And the last day of the cruise, it was a 10-day cruise. The last day of the cruise, he hands me his phone number, and the last 5 digits of his phone number were 7222227. I don't know, there's three twos in there. 72227, I think is what it was. Yeah. So 3 twos. And it's like both of my numbers together, 722 and 227 were together. And I mean, I'm literally looking at the card in almost like a shock, like, "What? What?"
whoa.
And so and then it was such a significant relationship, and from that, he said, "Well, I didn't have this book in my mind when I was on the cruise, but it was through meeting him and then his abilities and then my experiences that we came together and we started writing the book." Now we said, "Well, why don't we start on once we got back to our homes, so, well, why don't we start on Saturday?" Okay, that's a good time. And then I'm writing. We get together. I'm have a sheet of paper, and I just go to put the date on it, and it's 11/11. I'm like, it wasn't planned. It just happened. Right.
Yeah.
So these numbers have come up in so many ways. I couldn't, it's just there's so many ways that they come up. But was
Oh, and they
really
come up for you, like, when
daily.
you ask,
Yeah.
you still get the numbers. It was like when you were doing your 30-day walk,
Yeah.
and that whole random situation of where you were talking about the mom and the stroller and
Mm.
it just that
Synchronicity. Yeah.
yeah, they come up all over the place for you
Yeah.
when
Oh,
you
they're,
ask.
yeah. Which is why I know, sometimes they're a little more, impactful and sometimes but I see the numbers every day. really do. I
Yeah.
see them
Yeah.
every day. I'll stop a video and it'll be right at 2:27 or 7:22 or whatever. But the thing about the numbers, so here these numbers have been so significant to me, as well as angels as well, which is why my book's called Journey with an Angel. But the first day, that 11:11, and David was channeling information about numbers because the universe is mathematical.
Mhm.
And that's why numbers are so significant. And that's why a lot of the numbers, you have angel numbers,
Mm.
but he was channeling in all the different numbers for each of the dimensions. So there's the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth dimensions, right? And then each out of those dimensions, there's realms. So each realm has three dimensions in it. So the third dimension, right, has the first, second, and wait, the physical realm has the first, second, and I should have looked at this before I started this. First, second, and third uh, dimension is in the physical realm, right? That makes sense. And then the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension is the spiritual realm. I think it's the spiritual realm, celestial realm. It's the celestial realm. But the seventh, eighth, and ninth dimension is the angelic realm.
Mm.
Okay. Is the angelic realm. So now here's David on the phone and we're writing this out and all that. He says, and my guides are telling me you already know because you already know the number for the angelic realm because I don't want to get too confusing here. Each realm has its own 6-digit number. So the
Mm.
physical realm is 314159. What is that? The first 6 digits of pi.
Mm.
Okay. I don't remember the celestial realm, but there's a kind of formula to it. But so we do that one, and then we come to the angelic realm, and his guides. David said the guides say you already know the number for the angelic realm, and I'm like, oh, all right, and I just said 722227. He said yes, and I mean I was just like, what, what? And yeah, and it was just really amazing. I mean, again, and this was just the first day of starting to work on the book, right? And then all this other information, it's all in the book, but that's why numbers are so important. And once the angels or divine influences know how to get through to you, they're going to use them more and more. So they know that these numbers are absolutely going to resonate with me, and because of my connection to angels,
Oh
which
my
also
gosh.
is in the
Wait a
book.
second.
Mhm.
I have a memory of your numbers.
Okay.
When Alan and I were talking about moving to Las Vegas and or to moving to Texas,
Texas. Yeah,
do you remember that?
I do.
Tell a story about that. That was like
Yeah.
you're like, okay, so go
You
tell
tell
the
the
story
story.
because you have a different perspective because Alan was not on board.
Okay. Um, I have to kind of recall exactly, but so I was going into my office. You guys were contemplating about moving to Texas. I was actually coming over to your house that day
Yeah, good.
to
That's my memory.
yeah, yeah. And so as I get out of my car, I look back and I see a Texas license plate, and I believe this is what it was. I have a picture of it, but because I take pictures of my numbers too.
Yeah,
I
right on.
believe there was a 722 license plate next to it, or
Mhm,
227 license plate next to
mhm.
it on either side. Is that how you remember it? Or
Yeah,
it was on
yeah,
either side? Yeah.
yeah,
And then in between was a
yeah.
Texas license plate. So it was like these two
Whoa.
surrounding it.
Ah!
And so to me, that's okay. That's a sign, that excites me. I get excited when I see the numbers, right?
Oh, me too.
But
Because you called me up
yeah.
and you're like, "Oh my gosh." Or actually, no, you got to the house and you and I were like doing backflips because we know like this is like a clear sign. Like and
Yeah.
it's exciting when we catch them because it's so easy to catch them. But anyway, Alan was not on board with that. But angel numbers worked because we're in Texas
Yeah. Well,
and
he
we're
had a
happy.
lot on his mind that day. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
so
no,
that
it's
was,
intense times.
and not
So
everyone connects to them, like we do. And that's fine. It's
well,
just,
in sticking with numbers again for a second is that,
Mhm.
and this is just as I'm going down this journey and this phase of just getting really curious about the human experience, you start to learn about sacred geometry and David is right, of course. And now you have a ton of people saying the whole universe is numbers.
Mm.
It's beautiful. And so the reason I'm doing the 3, 6, and 9 is playing with the numbers to see, let me see if I can have a magical experience here. and
Mhm.
then and then you just kind of coming back, and you guys can search on YouTube for sacred geometry and numbers, angelic numbers, different dimensions, and I mean, I would say, whatever moves you, go down those rabbit holes. There's so much information now everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it is really neat to see how the realms, right? So you were talking about different dimensions, and right now we're in the 3D realm. It feels like we're now going 4D, 5D, and we are. And it's just a matter of, if we can get into flow,
Mhm.
it flows.
Mhm.
It's just like that morning of waking up and miserable. I didn't wake up miserable at 3:30 in the morning every morning. That was that morning. And then to sit and pray and just pray and pray and
Mhm.
pray and ask. I was praying and
Mhm.
asking at the same time.
Yeah.
And then it all started, like,
That's a lot what prayer is asking. Mhm.
absolutely, from a genuine soul self is really,
Mhm.
really, it's really, really fun. Okay, so I have to do one fun thing, and this is just for you, Lisa.
Yep. Okay. Mhm.
So, synchronicities, right? So, this was my license plate in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
And believe,
Mhm.
you don't need to see me. So,
Mhm.
at the time, you and I had been working together, and I started to realize, like, wow, if you believe in yourself, obviously believe in something bigger than yourself, but like, just believe and you can achieve. It's the only thing I used to tell people: if you're going to fake it till you make it on anything, fake this.
Mhm.
Um, and so we moved to Texas, and of course, license plates don't go. So again, synchronicity, like asking, what are the chances that this is a very common, wanting to have a personalized license plate, believe, right? So I thought, So I went on the website in Texas to see what words I could find, and believe was available in just different letters, right? But it was still clearly a belief. But then you and I had a conversation about it, and I'm like, yeah, because when someone would ask me, well, what do you mean by believe? I used to be like, what? Believe in something. Like, it was like, I don't want people to ask me about that. So here's my new license plate.
Mm. Mm. Nice.
I got it. Isn't that so
Nice.
fun? And
Yeah.
so I went to pick this up you pick it up from the tax assessor's office. And so I go to pick it up, and the lady's like, this plate was available? I'm like, isn't that amazing? Synchronicity,
Yeah.
asking. And I
Yeah.
haven't put it on my car yet, but because I just got it, but I was like, oh, this is so fun. And
Mhm.
that's when you know you're in flow. But even the lady
Mm.
behind the desk is like, I really can't believe. I'm like, I know, but
Mhm.
I asked. And so look at what happened. Universe is like, here you go. And it's
Yeah.
perfect. And so now I get to drive around. I don't think anybody's going to ask me about that. But since Miracle Monday, in another thing too that is part of all of this flow, since I started calling it that, and
Mhm.
even when I went back in to have, kind of tune ups and whatever, and I started talking about Miracle Monday,
Mhm.
um, it gave it more power to put it in the context under which it was, because a miracle did happen. And so the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, there's miracles everywhere. I see them everywhere. And it really is a neat thing to, how you have your numbers so loud and clear. So now when you ask, you get your answer in the form of numbers and other ways too. But really, I don't have any, sevens and twos are your numbers, right? Mine don't come in the form of numbers per se, although when I catch the 222, the 333, the 444, the 555, the 1111, the 111, I catch them all the time.
Mm.
And sometimes, and when I catch the 27, usually on your phone, 227 on 227, right? February 27th. when I catch that, I always screenshot it and send it to you because I know like that's, you're smiling at me, you're talking to me, and it's like universe saying, "Oh, your buddy Lisa's just having a good day." And I will always screenshot it and take a picture and send it to you because
Mhm.
we're in different time zones now. So
Mhm.
you'll get it and
Hmm.
it won't be your time.
Mm.
Anyway, I thought that that was really something fun to,
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it was available. I mean, yes, of course they believe miracles. Got it.
Mhm.
Kind of funny. Oxymoron.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I got the personalized license plate. I had to have 7 numbers, so it couldn't be 7222227, so I had to just throw an extra 2 in the middle. But I have seen, when you're coming out of the grocery store or wherever you're shopping, and people are always looking at that license plate, and there was one day that there was this, little, you know, I don't know, maybe 8-year-old boy with his mom, and they're walking by my car, and he did the whole neck turn, and he was just staring at that thing. It was so funny, and I just, it makes me smile. They didn't I mean, I was walking up, they didn't know it was my car, but, it was just it's cool because it does, catch your attention.
Mhm.
And, David was in town one day. We were working on the book. We were at Whole Foods. It was the funniest thing. And he was staying, with me as we were writing the book. And we're going through buying groceries at Whole Foods. And the cashier asked us, "Would you like to round it up to 227?" And it was funniest thing because 'cause we're like, "Yes!" We were
Would
so
love
excited,
to.
and she's like, "Wow, I usually get a no," or, I usually what and I said, "Can I take a screenshot of the," whatever the screen she was on? It was so funny. We didn't care, it's like, it
Yeah.
was just so funny, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's just hilarious. And that's the kind of, it comes in and even with such like the timing, you're not expecting them.
Yeah.
And when they come, it's like, like, of course we'll round up to 227, yeah, that was a really funny one. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, moving on to one way to really incorporate divine flow in your life is to ask. Sometimes, and prayer is a form of asking. So,
Mhm.
the difference, and we'll talk about meditation too. So, I see the difference as prayer is about asking, meditation is about receiving,
Mm.
right? So, prayer, you're asking
Mhm.
God, right? God,
Mhm.
please help me with this or whatever it might be, or please help someone else. But meditation is where you quiet that mind and you allow information to come in, right? So,
Mhm.
seeing kind of that difference between praying and asking. But asking is really important. Like I talked about earlier, I was in need of help. And that's how I started my journaling was help me. Where am I supposed to go? And it was
Mhm.
so like I was so in a place that I was sincerely asking. It wasn't like, I could use some help here. It was like, no, help me. Where am I supposed to go? And then 3 days later, I ran into who would ultimately become my mentor for a period of years. So, um, but the asking, is something that you want to continue to do on a regular basis. Don't worry about overwhelming, you know, God or the angels or whoever you're asking, right? Or your higher self. They have there's such an abundance of support in the universe, and use it. It's just
Yeah.
use it. And one way to really use it effectively is to ask because, there's what you do is you allow the support to come in, but because we have free will and all that, if we're um asking opens up the ways to where we're now in an open space to receive the guidance. But if we're not asking, we're probably on our plan and not the divine plan and not allowing that to come in. And plus, they can only do so much because of free will, right? But they can protect us and so forth.
Can I just
So
piggyback off of prayer real quick?
sure.
And I think that's a great distinction between prayer and meditation. They
Hmm.
both have so much power.
Yes.
But I had a really unique opportunity where my aunt and uncle, so my dad's brother and wife, so my aunt, who had a big part in raising us, um, what a wonderful weekend. So my cousin came out, and so it was my cousin, her two daughters, who are 17 and 21. And I don't even know if I remember them. It's been so long since I've seen them. Um, but you're family, so you totally
Mhm.
know who each other is, right?
Yep.
And I was very, very close to my cousin. I mean, I'm still very close to my cousin growing up, but as families go, you just naturally go, and especially if you're in geographically a different location. So anyway, it was just wonderful being with family, and I gotta not use names, but she would know who I'm talking about. I will say my 17-year-old second cousin. Um, what a beautiful soul. And she is deeply Christian. And I looked at my cousin, I'm like, well, where did this come from? Because I mean, we may have been raised. I mean, y'all know my dogma was AA growing up. I wasn't raised with religion, but I was baptized Christian in my teenage years. Um, and so, but they were, because I know I'd go to vacation Bible school in some of the summers that my dad was in jail or gone or whatever. They played a big part in raising me. So anyway, so but Val's like, it doesn't come from me, right? And I said, okay, this is wonderful. Let's talk about it. And I was so intrigued because she's 17 years old with a belief inside of her that is so beautiful. And I said, well, what is your goal? Why are you in the youth group? Because she had to go home because she was running the youth group in her church the next day. And she says, I have to bring people to the truth, the way, the truth, and the light of Jesus. And I said, oh, you're a way shower. I think that's so wonderful. And so when you pray, it doesn't matter really what you're praying to. I think Jesus is a beautiful thing to pray to, especially if it moves you, if you're
Mhm.
really connected to, Jesus or God, or all sorts of different words that
Mhm.
different religions have and use. Um,
Yeah.
by all means, because if
Yeah.
they move you, that power of prayer is even stronger.
Mhm. Yeah. And for me, I more have conversations
Hmm.
more than prayer, right? Now I'll
Yeah.
ask, right, for certain things. Sometimes I'll ask, just give me whatever it is that I need to say or put out in the universe. Just I'm going to trust that it's going to come in and then it'll go through and that'll be awesome. And thank you so much. But really power pack me today, or whatever, that type of thing. Cause it's really, you're a conduit, right? When
Yeah.
you are connected into divine flow. And that's actually a point I hadn't thought about until just right now, as far as today's subject. But when you're in divine flow, you are pulling that divine energy into your world, into your environment, into those around you. And that's when you're radiating that divine energy because you're in flow with it. And that's why it can be, for some people, just being around certain people when you're in divine flow brings a calming energy to them that didn't exist before you walked into the room or whatever it is, because you're radiating this kind of supportive, grounded, gentle, loving energy. And that's because you're living in that divine energy, because you're living in divine flow, which I think is one of the greatest services we could do on this planet
Well,
is
and that
to.
goes back to, like, for me personally, when I pray, I will always end it with, and it is a conversation. And at the end of it all, I release the attachment to the outcome. I always just say, for the highest and best good of all involved.
Yeah.
And that's like my wrap up to prayer, is because I know the answers are going to come through.
Yeah.
I know, because it's a muscle and I've exercised a whole hell of
Right.
a lot of it. But yeah, so whatever it is, I love that you just gave us an analogy of how you go through it, because I do something very similar, but I do what over time has worked for me, and how I can connect most to the divine flow that will flow through us, and others will feel
Yeah.
it. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I tend to, because I have the angelic connection, I tend to talk more with the angels. Now, if I'm
Mhm.
really needing some heavy duty, help, I'll probably, okay, God, let's go,
Okay,
and get a
can
little
I
more,
ask a little bit of a
Mhm.
deeper question?
Sure.
Okay, so it's my personal experience so far that we've used higher self, but now I really understand my higher self to be my soul self.
Mhm,
So instead of saying higher self, I it's my soul self. So anyway, I'm playing with words, right?
mhm.
And then of course you have the angels, but aren't they also your guides? Or what is your, we all have guides. I was even talking to Alan about this. Um, what do you believe? And I said, do you believe you have guides? And he says, yeah. And I said, oh, okay, that is a question I've never asked him before. Of course he believes
Mm.
in God and one creator and source of all things. But guides, so how do you differentiate? You're
Mm.
connected to your angels. How do you connect to the difference between the 2?
Yeah, so well, there's the angels, which are, angelo, the origin of the name is messenger,
Hmm.
right? So, but I connect to them again because that's just what resonates with me the
Hmm.
most. Part of the book is talks about being an incarnated angel, which is part of what I got through other people because I wasn't connected into that, and that me being an incarnated angel. So there's actually an existence of me in the angelic realm and an existence of me here at the
Hmm.
same time, right? So
Hmm.
that's really what that means. So that's probably why angels are a little more powerful for me because I have such a strong connection to the angelic realm. And then, of course, the numbers and everything else that kind of validates that. But then guides can be different things. So, for instance, David, his guides are a higher intelligence that live in a different realm. That live in the celestial realm. So it's a higher, more evolved a higher evolved civilization, if you will. So entities from that civilization that come through him, but in a positive, it's all positive, right?
Yeah.
And so and he's been connected to his guide since he was a little boy, and he could actually do telepathy and all that, move big bales of straw and hay and stuff. Those are heavy. I used to live in the country. Those are heavy, right? And
Super
he could
heavy.
do it with
Yeah.
his mind. And his mom was like, how did you get those bales when he's like 8 years old or something? How'd you get those bales into the wagon? He says, well, I just told him to get in the wagon. And she said,
I can
no,
see
you're
him saying
lying.
that.
Yeah, exactly, and "No, you're lying," or whatever, so she kinda shut down, don't to not use those abilities. Again, they just probably felt natural to him at that age. Anyhow, so but he still accesses them, and that's a lot of why, the book, some of the information the book is about. And also he died twice and remembers the whole experience of his death experience and then came back into his body, which is really fascinating. So you have guides in the form of those types of guides coming from a different realm, dimension. And then you can have deceased loved ones that come in that are
That
connected
can
to
be your
you,
guides too?
that can be
They're
your
your
guides
guide.
as well. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so, oftentimes when, like I would be talking about, this happened twice. Okay, synchronicity.
Mhm.
Twice, once okay, maybe coincidence, or twice not so much. And I was talking about my grandma who had passed away, and I was teaching in the moment, and I had a pen in my hand, and after I mentioned her, the pen just flew out of my hand. And I'm like, "Well, that's interesting." Picked it up, and in a completely different workshop, same thing happened. I mentioned my grandma, and the pen flew out of my hand. And I was just like, "What's going on with that?" Right? "Okay, grandma, you're here," right? "Maybe you're just trying to let me know," and so forth. And even in Ohio, that was one of the experiences that I had because, you know, I hadn't kinda gotten to the 227s and all that yet, but the synchronicities were so much greater. And the whole night was just a synchronistic ball of stuff, that was going on in this particular experience, but I'm gonna cut right to the chase, and that was, I walked into somebody's garage with 2 ladies, one of them was my friends, one of them was one of my friends, and it smelled like my garage in Michigan. So here I'm in Ohio at the time. It just had that essence of my garage in Michigan. And then I looked over at the wall and there was a crutch there hanging on the wall, and it reminded me of my grandma because she had one leg shorter than the other, and she used a cane all the time because of that
Oh.
reason. And so the piece that really brought this all together, so with both a guide and synchronicity, is that a week previous to that, I had prayed to God, one of those heartfelt prayers. I had prayed to God for patience. And this was back in maybe 2000, 2001, probably
I was just gonna
Yeah,
ask the timeline on that. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
about
A while back,
2001.
a
So
while
so
back.
Eric was about 4, I think,
Mhm.
5 maybe, and, um and I was having issues with my patience with him. In fact, that's one of the things I say was my greatest blessings that he brought me was learning patience.
Mm.
And so then what happened was is I shared out loud that, gosh, with my experience is that I was thinking of my grandma. And then one of the gals said, well, if your grandma had a message for you, what might the message be? Or something along those lines. That's kind of my wording today, but if she had something to tell you. And I said, well, she would tell me she loved me. That's kind of standard.
Yeah,
But what I remember about my grandma is that when I was little, she would play canasta with me. And for anybody who knows canasta,
hard
it's
game.
a lot of cards to hold in your hand. And my little hands just couldn't get all those cards in there. So I would put them on my chair, spread my legs, put them on the chair below me so that I could play canasta with her. And then
Mm.
what came out after that, just so organically, was she had the patience of a saint. And there it was. My prayer was getting answered through the guidance from my grandma from wherever she was at the time, and that's what I needed because what it helped me to do was to connect to what it felt like to have someone that in your life that's so close to you be patient with you, and also to, in contrast, to know what it's like to have someone be impatient with you. It doesn't
Mhm,
feel good to be with someone who's impatient with you, especially a parent or a grandparent, but patience makes you feel like you're the most important person in the room. That's how she made me feel, that you were completely loved, that you can take your time, and that I care.
mhm.
And so, that was
Perfect.
such a significant moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, like, in my personal quest to make sense of my own experience here, in this body this time around, um, it is I never even I was just talking to my channeler Jason, and we do a
Mhm.
lot of soul work, and that's just to keep me healthy and happy. Um, it's deep, deep work. And I'm like, I've never even bothered to ask,
Mhm.
who are my guides? Right? I've just had, because I just have this knowing. It's part of who I am, and it's served me very well as far as just I very much listen when the messages come in, and I have since I was a small child, and growing up in some really rough situations. So to sit there, and this is all in the last couple of weeks since really you and I started digging into the guts of this podcast coming out, and different layers of vulnerability, and my intent, like, it is amazing to me how many people are listening that I know and I care very, very much about. And my intention would never be to hurt anybody by sharing my experience, and just
Mhm.
for everybody to know what I share is through the lens of Sondra's perception
Mhm.
of how events transpire, mostly how they make me feel. But just know, like, I would never ever, do anything to hurt anybody who I love so much, and the relationships that you and I have been. Why are we here, you and me, again, doing this for all of you, and being vulnerable and opening up for everybody to see, just anybody and anybody who wants to see. Um,
Mhm.
is because it's time, because relationships there's nothing really more important than to just come from a space of non-judgment. And you guys can go back if you haven't seen some of our prior podcasts. I mean, it's really important to not judge ourselves, not judge others, and all sorts of other emotional components. But um in last week's podcast, which if you haven't seen, I ended up getting really vulnerable and I ended up crying, and I was talking about missing my family and feeling so alone, and 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 I'm not, I mean, I'm not alone, and I've got my husband and we have two little kids, and we will build new routines around the holidays. Here we are talking about the angelic realm, and we're bumping up against the holidays, the holy days, the holidays, um, or holy days as some might call them. Talking about angels, and um, anyway, just to kind of recap about what we were talking about last week, which my husband and I are out here. We're all alone. We have no family. I miss my family. I miss my mom. Because I just haven't seen her in years, and that means she hasn't seen my kids in years, and my stepdad, and my sister, and there's just been so much that's happened within my family. My freaking stepbrother's in Ireland with his wife, and they're married, and they're in Ireland. It's like, and God bless, my stepmom gets to go and be with them for the holidays. So that's good. She'll be, we all don't need to be alone, unless we choose to be. Um, but anyway, it is, it's interesting being vulnerable for all of you and talking about this journey in life, and how, I can't believe how deep we are going, and because it's questions I'm getting from everywhere, including my second cousin, who has just got the purest heart of all time, and go, wow, I look at her like, so she has a calling, she's being called from her soul, from her heart. I can feel it, right? It's coming through the form of Jesus, but just look at it, how beautiful, right? The way, the truth, and the light. Isn't that amazing? That's high frequency. That's light. That's love. That's all the in the faith. It's like, wow, okay, that's unshakable, unwavering belief. And that
Mm.
is the thing that you can fake it till you make it. And your life's going to turn out pretty good. I will say, on that note, we have to, we've talked about belief systems and belief structures, and how belief systems can be very limiting to our own personal growth, and to be more open to that. But that might be a deeper podcast at a different time. But I thought it was interesting to go, of all the years that I've spent trying to find the creator of all things, and what does that mean to me, and how can I connect into that, never thought about my guides. So I'm doing some interesting work now, which is
Mhm.
opening that channel
Yeah.
to meet them and see what that feels like. Cause I'd
Yeah.
like to be more of a knower.
Well, yeah, and also a way to kind of sense if you're in flow with your guides can come in ways that you might just think you're in your own mojo kind of energy. So say you're writing and things are just flowing off the pen. There's no effort in it. You're in divine flow in those times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, sometimes I tend to like stuff comes through when I'm in the shower. In fact, one of my friends gave me a little uh post or not a post-it note, but a little pad and pen that you can have in the shower because I have so much stuff that comes to me in the shower. But man, I have gotten literally out of the shower, gone and wrote down what I had, get back in the shower, get back out of the shower, and write it down and get back in the shower. I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous, but okay, I'm going to go with it because I don't want to lose it. Right. And so I get in, and that's actually what was kind of how my book that I haven't finished yet, but that's kind of how it started because it was being downloaded. It was coming from I was
Little
getting
channel.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
downloading.
so
Yeah,
that's a lot of what kind of, I mean, we all have the ability to channel. It's not like there's only a certain people who have this ability. We all have the
we
ability
all do.
to channel, just
Mhm.
like we all have intuition. We're just not always tapped into it. And this is what this is about, is tapping in to these amazing resources that will change your life. It will change the way you experience your life. And that's one way is, whether it's music, which we're going to talk about here in a bit, but whether it's coming through that or art or whatever it is, or just in what you're saying, sometimes it's just like, man, it's just coming. So just get out of the way and let it come through. And that's so much of what channeling is about, is just opening up to the channels that are ready to come in and give you information. So that's really
Yeah.
really great. So moving on to, I'm not going to spend any time on this because there's a whole video about raising your vibration. That's
Mm,
part of, as you raise your vibration, you move more and more into alignment with your spirit.
mhm.
And I think that's episode 3. I believe it's
Yeah, I'm
episode
like, we did
3.
a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll just, guide you over to that one. We'll put a link in the description, around accessing that, but that's certainly a major way to be able to align, with your divine flow.
Huh.
And then we've covered somewhat more about meditation with,
Yep.
the prayer and how meditation is just allowing things to come in. Now your mind is going to want to go and get all distracted and start to make some noise, and it's not about resisting that, it's about just w- observing it without judgment. And there's a great, there's a company, I think it's called Headspace, and they were on Netflix, I believe, for a while, but they have a YouTube channel. It's great if you want to, if you're trying to get, into the whole meditative state and understand meditation. And actually, we just got done with a podcast
I was just
or
gonna say, I wish I
actually
would have.
a
Yeah.
radio show, yes, Mind Your Own
Yes.
Business, podcast. So we just literally came from being a guest on there to
Mhm.
recording this podcast. So we'll put a link to their podcast as well, or radio show. I think it's called a radio. They're using radio show
We're
instead of
getting so
podcast.
confused because mainstream media is not the same anymore, so we
Right.
don't know
Yeah.
what
So
this
we'll
really
we'll
is.
put a link to them as well,
Yeah.
and we'll post our appearance on our channel as well. So
Well, and
anyhow, but
Eden went into her particular meditation style that she does,
yeah,
where it connects the synapses, which
yeah,
there's a ton of meditation out there. But
yeah,
yeah, we're going to give you a couple ones to take a
yeah.
peek at and see if it resonates with you.
And that's why I brought that up, is because she was sharing that she has a meditation so that, we can connect our, the people who are watching us to them, and have another resource as a way to enrich their lives as well, because they're very much in sync with who
Yeah,
we are. So
yeah.
that's awesome. Now, this next one is to move into a line flow is music. In fact,
Hmm.
I probably need to listen to music a little bit more, but um, uh, music has its own vibration. Now, it depends on what kind of music, right, you're listening to. Not all music is higher vibrational music, but when that music, and I know you just had an experience with music here yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah.
Hmm.
And so music can, I mean, absolutely lift us. In fact, there's actually a quote. Let me just read this quote here by Beethoven, right? Um, Music is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy. Music is the electrical soil in which the spirit lives, thinks, and invents.
There's that
Right?
electrical component that is
Yeah.
really impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Music and not just I don't know if we have this in there, but like sound bowls and like I never really tuning forks and I never really up until this last year and a half. I mean, I have had we got a singing bowl when we were in Sedona. I got the
Mhm.
singing bowl. But coming back to music specifically, because we all have the kind of music that moves us. So, so I mean, I grew up with rock and roll. I'm so rock and roll. It's not even gangster rap and rock and roll. Um, and so Stacy Mia, my oldest, has taken up the French horn. Like the French horn, you come from a family of drummers. Where'd you get the horn from? So my brother's a drummer. My nephew's a drummer. My dad is a drummer. Anyway, like okay, French horn. Um, and so the sixth grade was at the high school doing it was a whole orchestra symphony of music, and the more I can feel, I can feel and connect, and I couldn't believe it. There I was last night. Maybe it was Jingle Bells. I don't even know, but it was just a song that everybody knows the words to, and you've heard 1,000 times, but there was a whole orchestra performing, and you can hear just every different instrument, and like I'm telling you, I had tears flowing down my face. Alan looks at me, he's like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "It's so beautiful." And I really, I wish I would have had a box of Kleenex the next time I go to a musical. I will absolutely make sure and bring a box of Kleenex, because the music will move you. And such a wonderful, wonderful way. It will boost your frequency and vibration so quickly. And even
Yeah.
just listening to whatever music moves you. But yeah, listening to a little bit more of it. I never liked classical music. Now I'm like, wow, listen to all the different instruments, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It's amazing. And then also, it's nature. Think
Mm,
of when you have been in in nature. Now, you go for walks and things like that, but when you get into like some of these just amazing places in nature, or even just hanging out in a little more, not so out of the city. City's kind of more brought in nature, so it's not
mhm,
as pure as if you go out, say, in Las Vegas, there's palm trees everywhere, but if you go out to the Red Rocks or, wherever, and it's a different you are in a different energy, and if you think about, especially, like, with mountains and things like that, there's a majestic energy to them
mhm.
and awe, and some of these places that exist in the world. I just recently came upon a Instagram, because I haven't been on Instagram until I started posting our podcast, because I didn't have
I
a lot
still
to
don't
post.
know how the dang thing works.
Yeah,
Instagram
so
drives me
getting used to
crazy.
it. It wasn't quite as intuitive as I had hoped, but I'm getting used to it. Anyway, but I came upon this channel. I don't have the name of it. I'll post the link in the description, because it has these places around the world I had no idea existed. And I was like literally blown away by some of these places that exist around the world. I'm like, where is this place? I haven't even heard of this place. And it's just breathtaking. And that's where you really can also feel that energy of, it's just whew, like the music, that nature, that visual, and the energy of it is just awe inspiring.
Awe-inspiring. And if you do live in a city, and if you have the opportunity to get out. I mean, Lake Mead, we spent the summer that we got, December 2020, when we got the ski boat. There is nothing quite like living on the water, and that was breathtaking. But even here and now, I have to tell you, the leaves, and I'm in a fall situation. I've never lived in four seasons. The it's so green and so blue, and so it happened to me. And so nature, because I'm paying attention to the beauty of it all, I'm walking into my tennis center, and usually I'm running late, and oh yeah, it was the day of the showing. And so my mind's in a million different places, but I had to go play tennis because it's addicting. Um, I got my tennis bag, and I'm just kind of racing into the tennis center. And there was this black crow that there was it looked like the sprinklers, right? The sprinklers left a little puddle, and there was this bird just taking a bath, right? And I stopped and I went, okay. I'm like, wow. And I just looked at the bird and I'm like, thank you for stopping me in my tracks from my busy nonsense mind and reminding me, oh my gosh, how beautiful. Here's a little birdie taking a bath, you know? And then as soon as I noticed the bird, and the bird noticed me, and it was like, I'm making you pay attention. And then he up and flew away. And I was like, oh, I love you. So thank you. Right. And thank you, grass, and thank you, water. And like just the experience of, outside in nature.
Mhm.
If you're
Yeah.
outside and you notice like birds flying in formation, take a moment
Yeah.
and just
Oh,
enjoy it.
yeah. That reminds me, when I moved to Colorado, the very first morning, I'm hearing these sounds I'd never heard before. And I looked outside through the in the backyard, which was really a forest, and there was like 7 moose back there,
Ooh,
or elk.
yikes.
They were elk, 7 elk. Yeah, and they were it was mating season, and they
Oh
were doing
dear.
the mating call. So I woke up the very first day in this new house in Colorado, because we were up at high elevation, 7,200, by the way.
There's our sevens and
7'2".
twos.
And it was just, wow, who gets to see that? And
Yeah.
even on the cruise, I remember the first morning of the cruise that I woke up, and there was a volcano in the middle of the ocean. I mean, again, these are things that are just, they impact you. It's like,
Mhm.
wow. And I'm say Christy, because she was with Christy, come look at this.
Yeah.
to wake up to a volcano in the middle of the ocean that
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going by. Yeah, so it's pretty cool when you have those types of experiences, and they definitely stay with you.
Yeah. Sounds,
Yeah,
music. It's all,
yeah.
just to take those moments that catch your attention,
Mhm,
that are part of all that is. We're all part
mhm.
of the same stuff,
Yeah,
stardust.
yep,
Anyway, just take a moment and appreciate it, because that
yep.
also is God giving you a little nudge to, Sondra, get out of your
Mhm,
head. Hey, here's this beautiful living thing that is saying hi. And it's so beautiful.
yeah.
Anyway,
Well, we hope what we brought to the table today helps you to get into divine flow so
mhm.
that you can experience some of this wonderful stuff. And I'm sure that many of you have already experienced it. So we'd love to hear your experiences with it, whether it's, intuitively you picked up something that really moved you in a direction, whether it's synchronicity or numbers or music or nature or prayer or meditation, whatever it is. We'd love to hear your experiences, and I know it would be beneficial for other people to hear about it too. So please do share, because we want to hear from you, and that's one way we can, at least in this venue. So, but we do hope that some of this brings more of it into your life, and just by talking about it, it's already doing that.
Absolutely. So thanks you guys for joining us today. Don't forget to hit the like and the share if you feel so compelled. And like Lisa was just saying, the stories they're just what fills us up. So hopefully your Christmas will go well. I don't know if we have one more coming out before then. No. So Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. And this would be, you've already gone through Hanukkah season. And we will be wishing you a happy new year on our next podcast. So see y'all next week.